Welcome to Safe Spaces, the podcast brought to you by Women's Health in Women's Hands Community Health Center. Join us as we delve into crucial conversations about gender-based violence, featuring survivors, advocates, and community members to raise awareness and offer insights on this crucial issue affecting our communities. We are your hosts, Leslie
and Tommy Lola. Safe Spaces is presented by the GBV Prevention and Cure Cascade Program, supported by funding from Women and Gender Equality Canada. Tune in to this podcast series, available on all major podcast platforms and our website, flourishaccess.ca.
Please be aware that this podcast covers sensitive topics such as domestic abuse and gender-based violence. To protect the privacy and safety of our guests, some have chosen to remain anonymous. The content of this podcast is suitable for those aged 16 plus. Welcome back to another episode of the Safe Spaces podcast, the podcast where we tackle the tough but necessary conversations surrounding gender-based violence. Today I'm joined by guest host Ziana, who is a case manager for Women's Health in Women's Hands GBV program. We're diving into a topic that affects countless individuals but is often left unspoken: gender-based violence in the workplace. In this episode, we'll explore how GBV manifests in professional settings, from harassment and discrimination to power imbalances that perpetuate silence. We'll discuss the impact these behaviors have not only on individuals, but on workplace culture as a whole. Our goal is to shine light on this pervasive issue, share stories of resilience, and highlight steps needed to foster safer, more equitable work environments. Joining us today is Maimuna. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Maimuna. A social work student at George Brown College, I work with Fred Victor as a shelter worker in the category of women who face gender-based violence. And I'm an advisory person on the Committee of Women's Health in Women's Hands that deals with gender-based violence.
Thank you for that, Maimuna. So we're going to start again. I'm Ziana, the gender-based violence counselor at Women's Health in Women's Hands. So we're going to go into question 1, and that's: how does GBV, gender-based violence, manifest in the workplace, and what are the most common forms that occur in this setting?
I would say gender-based violence at workplace, these are harmful acts that are directed at individuals based on their gender, and this results in unsafe work environments, hence impacting their physical and mental well-being. So, the common forms of gender-based violence that occur in workplaces, I would say verbal abuse, whereby these are insults and threats that are degrading, and the threats of violence like bullying based on gender in workplaces. And this verbal abuse put more on the women's side because people know that women are weak, we are weak sex. So they put this verbal abuse on us. And another thing, I would say exploitation of workers based on gender, whereby it involves taking advantages of power imbalances within our workplaces. And most people who do this are in higher positions that manipulate and exploit subordinates of lower positions, and they often target vulnerable employees based on their gender. Another form, I would say, sexual harassment, whereby these are unwanted touches or inappropriate interactions with the opposite gender, unwanted advances like flattering with the opposite sex, and that is unwelcome in workplaces.
Thank you for that, Maimuna. So I want to touch on specifically where you said a weaker gender. So I feel what you mean is they look at us more as a gender, that females or female-identified individuals as individuals that aren't as ready to stand up for themselves versus other genders. We may look like we're more willing to take certain things before taking action against it versus male or male-identified individuals where certain things just most likely wouldn't happen in the first place just because of how they present as male or male identified.
Yeah. I would say about that, like we women, like I'll base this back in Africa, in my home country, because I'm a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like I've gone to like a government office. I've finished my diploma or my degree. I've completed it, and now I'm looking for a job. So I've gone to an office like in the government. These people tend to use us, whereby if you want to be given that specific job that you're applying for, like the manager would want to use you
Mm-hmm.
to sleep with you, whereby you don't want it as a girl. You're just looking for a job so that you can sustain your life. But because you want the job, of course you're going to give in and sleep with this manager. And the end of it all, you're not even going to get a job. You know what I'm trying to mean?
I understand what you're saying. And I like that you brought up that example because I had an example also for the sexual harassment and assault in the workplace as it
Yeah.
related to our first question. And it was in a high tech profile case, a female engineer at a tech company reported ongoing sexual advances and inappropriate comments from a male supervisor. She feared retaliation if she reported it, as the company culture was heavily male dominated and had no clear anti harassment or sexual harassment policies in place. This type of harassment is common, particularly in male dominated industries, where reporting is often used as a form of weakness or a form of reprisal. Like you said, you're not going to report because the fear is you reporting is going to cause you to lose your employment.
Yeah, you're in that fear. You don't want to lose the job.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep the job, but of course you have been harassed. And the person who has harassed you, like these people tend to be close to the HR, like the
Mm-hmm.
manager. Like you would say, how am I going to start telling my HR that we had sex with the manager? Of course, the HR is not going to believe you. And more so, if the HR is a man, it would even become worse.
Because
Like
they're
you're
Yeah.
gonna
going to keep that to yourself, like, and in the long run, it's going to affect your mental health.
sorry with that, the men are usually choosing to stick together, right?
Yeah.
So in a lot of these cases, when the woman you're employed to a company where the heads are mainly men,
Mm-hmm.
and like even where they probably attended the same college, they have like a brotherhood or whatnot, they're always sticking together. And
Yeah.
then even in these cases, like in workplaces, you realize that women are harder to get promotions in some instances because, as you said before, they're considered the weaker sex, and how dare a woman run a department or be a supervisor or a manager. So we're still having situations like those, and it's very disheartening because in a lot of cases we're seeing where the women are equally qualified or more qualified than the men. But
Yes.
the men, they're always looking to prey on women for these reasons. Oh, you're not going to report me because you're going to lose your job. If you go to
Mm-hmm.
HR, it's going to be because your skirt is too short or
Yep.
your dress is too tight or, so
There's going to be that victim blaming that ends up happening.
right.
Yeah. So you're going to remain sad for the rest of your life. It's affecting your mental health. And the end of it all, if your mental health is not good, you're going to lose your job at the end of the day.
And on the note of mental health, what impact would you say that GBV has on an individual's career, their mental health, and their overall well being?
I would say this violence on mental health, like it leads to isolation of individuals, whereby victims withdraw from social interactions both at work and in the outside world, which can lead to extortion feelings of loneliness and depression. You're going to fear to tell your workmates, or go tell your HR, or write even a report to report this particular person that has harassed you or has done verbal abuse on you, because you're in fear of losing your job, and it is going to lead to you being isolated from your friends, hence causing depression to yourself.
Yeah, the depression in these cases are so real because
Yeah.
when you go to work, so this is what I always believe. I believe that you spend so many hours at work, right? So
Yeah.
work should be, I would say, comfortable. It should be like, we're not expecting it to be home, but we're
Like
expecting that
it,
because you spend so many hours there, you want to have like a good environment. But then when you feel like you're existing in a space where you're constantly victimized, and you don't know if you can wear a dress. You go to school for so many years, you get educated, you choose your career path, whether it is that you want to be an engineer or an IT technician, or one of those male dominated fields, and you go and you
yeah,
spend all these years getting educated, and you come and you get a job, and then you're working, and it's like none of that matters because you are considered to be weaker. You are considered to be, you're so strange. Why would you want to be working as a manager in IT? Why would you need to be a programmer? Why would you need to be, So that really does affect one's mental health. When you go home at night, you're staring in the ceiling and you're wondering, oh my God, where did I go wrong? Why am I not getting this right? When in truth and in fact, it's not you that's a problem, right?
yeah,
It's culture that's the problem.
Because you're not being provided that psychological safety basically in the workplace in itself, which then causes the lingering imposter syndrome to show up, which is nothing of your own, but it's created by the unhealthy psychological environment in the workplace. So especially like around mental health and gender-based violence in the workplace, some really key ways how it could definitely show up is like chronic stress, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, or even just social withdrawal, which then could also impact your career or the projection that you want for your career, because the social withdrawal in itself, it's probably going to lead you to not wanting to go after that promotion as much. It's probably going to lead you to not wanting to give your opinions or your thoughts or new initiatives in group meetings or team meetings with upper management because of that fear and that psychologically unsafe environment that has been created at the workplace, because you're not getting that support that you require as a female that's also in that workplace that's male dominated.
yes, that's true.
With this too, you find that people absenteeism becomes a thing where you don't want to go to work. You're taking sick days. You're at work and you're in the bathroom sobbing or crying. Or mental health is such a thing. Like at work, if your workspace, if you feel like even something is happening within your department and there's nobody that you can have that conversation with, or there's nobody that's willing to stand with you or to say, okay, your feelings matter, your feelings are valid, let's see how we can fix this. That's even another thing, right? You even have
Yeah,
people not believing that this is what's happening. So then you really feel like you're stuck between a rock and a really hard place because you value your job. You want to carry out your functions. You want to be at work and you want to function to your highest potential. But with all of this on your mind and on your heart, like your heart is heavy, your mind is heavy, you can't really function to your full potential. And then when you go to like have a conversation that this is happening, you're hoping for resolve, but it doesn't come because they don't even believe you that you're having a problem. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about GBV in the workplace.
and
Increasing support and allyship for individuals that come forward.
yeah, I would say another thing is the self-esteem issue, like the psychological effects that can lead to feelings of worthlessness and self-doubt, hence impacting personal and professional confidence in an individual.
Most
And
definitely.
and the another thing is the retention, whereby I think retention means like keeping something in, like if that thing happens to me, like a manager's arrest me, I'll keep that thing in my memory, like it's not going to go away for the rest of my life. And this thing, like the victims leave their jobs to escape an abused work environment, hence leading to a high turnover rates and experienced employees. Like you're chasing away the experienced employees because of your verbal abuse, your sexual harassment, because of your desires. If a worker cannot give in to your sex desires, of course I'm going to lose the job. I'm going to walk away from the workplace.
That's a very good point that you bring up also because that also then explains the financial strain that gender-based violence in the workplace can also cause. Because if someone or an employee within a workplace is frequently getting verbally abused from both managers, other individuals, or male workers in their workplace, eventually they're going to have experience of chronic stress, anxiety, low self-esteem, and then eventually that can lead to the development of depression, which then is going to cause you to, maybe I'm going to need to take a leave of absence. Maybe it's going to have to be a short-term or long-term mental health leave of absence. And then depending on your workplace, you may get reprisal, or they may cut your hours, or they may say, oh, well, you're not going to be able to return to work, which then gives the financial strain. And then depending on the type of job you have, yes, in Canada, we have unemployment insurance, but you would have had to have been working for a certain amount of hours to accumulate that. And then if you end up being someone where you end up having a lot of intersectionalities of oppression, where you may have just started that job a month ago because you left the previous job where you were also being harassed in the workplace. So now you didn't have enough hours in the first job to take that break, and now you don't have enough hours in this job to take that break also. So then that just creates the spiral of gender-based violence in the workplace, but then the compounding mental health challenges that affect the individual, not only personally, but then professionally.
And Ziona, you see how you just said that, like moving from workplace to workplace? So as you said that, something came to me, right? So can you imagine, like, you're working at job A and then you're being abused, right? You're having all this depression, you're having mental health issues and everything, and you're seeking better, so you move on to something else. But in moving on to something else, really, you don't know what's out there. And then now because you've already been scarred, when you move on to that job, your next job, the scarring doesn't go away, right?
Yeah.
So
It
now,
doesn't.
no, it doesn't. So now when you're at that job, it's a fresh start, but you still have those unhealed scars. And then now it can be a situation where in the previous job, you kept feeling like you weren't, let's say it wasn't sexual abuse. Let's say it was just the power. Okay, so you don't know what you're doing. You're being spoken down to, everything you do, is being questioned and stuff like that. So now you move over to the other job with your confidence not even being at 100%, right?
Yeah.
It's not 100% because no, you're like all of those things, all of those unkind words that were previously spoken, it's still lingering in your mind. So now you're at that job and you're there, but you're not functioning like as you would if you weren't previously affected by that situation. So that's something too that is real. And that really does have to do with your mental health not being at, in a good space.
Yep. And even with doing that, it's even just to show, again, back to the financial piece of even having to move the job so quickly where you're not able to even take that time by yourself to focus on your mental health, because you have to make income. So you automatically have to, okay, put my mental health on the back burner because I need to make sure I can provide for my household or provide for my children, or make sure they're able to go to daycare the next day. Because even though we have daycare for low income, it depends if you're going to school and if you're working. And then at that, you would have to be going to school and working every day if you wanted to have access to that daycare. And if you were and you still wanted your child in daycare, you would then have to pay regular fees, which even if just saying you paid regular fee daycare for 6 days out of the month, you could still be looking at close to $800 for that. So even that, you're not able to prioritize your mental health because, again, we don't have the support around gender-based violence where it's, okay, I may not have met the hours to get unemployment, but I went through some form of gender-based violence in my previous work, which maybe there should be a priority list for unemployment, where now this person can get sick benefits or unemployment for a few weeks during the transition of working on their mental health, getting the support also provided for them to work on that mental health. So just a lot of compounding things into one.
And I would say that, ladies there, if you're going to face gender-based violence at work, put your mental health first. It doesn't
Absolutely.
to make who's going to do it to you. Our mental health comes first.
Most definitely. And always documenting, because this is also to provide information. So as much as we may be afraid to advocate for ourselves out loud or within the workplace in itself, there's still labor board that you can go to and make anonymous reports. You can still document everything, ensure you know the name of the individual it was from, the time, if you could put the location, the date it happened, and just ensuring also with labor board, because we do have that secondary umbrella of support, if we then have that documentation and go to labor board, or if you do end up making a report, because if you do make a report about something and then you end up getting fired for that, or they bring up something that has nothing to do with it, that's technically considered a reprisal, and that is illegal. So you can't get fired for reporting something that goes against labor board standards. That would be considered reprisal, and then that's a human rights violation. So as much as we have the fear of reporting, also knowing what our rights are in those instances is very important and very key at the same time.
Yeah. Document so that you can provide proper evidence.
So now just going into our next question, how can workplaces better support victims of gender-based violence?
I want to emphasize on two things about that, like creating awareness and training employees that gender-based violence is not allowed at work. You face it, report it. Put workshops and campaigns that raise awareness about gender-based violence, its impacts, and the available resources. Where do these people go when they face these certain things? And another thing, educate employees and the management to recognize signs of gender-based violence, support the victims, and promote respectful workplace behaviors in our work environment. Because our work environment, we need to create a safe space for us. Like the work environment, we spend most times at work. It's like our home. So we need a safe space to stay in. And another point is to establish clear policies about GBV. Like there is zero tolerance. We should create a zero tolerance policy and implement and enforce policies against all forms of harassment and violence at workplaces. There should be a punishment. A person who does gender-based violence to the opposite, I don't know if it is to lose your job, it is upon you. You need your job, don't do certain things that are going to affect the opposite gender. And flexible work arrangements whereby all employees are allowed to adjust to work schedules for safety and recovery purposes. And I would emphasize things more on the women side, because it's more gender-based violence at workplaces. Because women are weaker sex, they face gender-based violence a lot. Even men do face gender-based violence in forms of verbal abuse, but there should be policies that govern workplaces against gender-based violence.
Most definitely, especially in terms of the policy. So having clear and concise, but also enforcing anti-gender-based violence policies. So organizations having specific policies towards it, and also having comprehensive policies and doing trainings around them. So just like organizations always have their policy update meetings, ensuring that that's also something that's covered. Or if it's something that's also being newly implemented, I would even say having it be its own meeting by itself to ensure that everyone's actually comprehending everything that's being said, and then also setting clear reporting channels. So
Yeah.
other than having the policies, how do they go about reporting? Are there forms online? Is there forms in the office? Are there forms that are accessible for individuals that may need that accessibility? Ensuring the confidentiality. So ensuring that whatever is said, it is also being reported to a third party outside the organization so that there's no crosses of any forms of bias or any power being taken into effect. So in terms of if it's someone that works frontline or retail or someone that's not in management making a report against someone that may be their floor supervisor or their site lead, ensuring that that's not going to, the reports aren't being made to HR or the individual that the next person reports to. It's being sourced third party outside of the company to ensure that both sides are being looked at through very much unbiased lens. And then with that form of unbiased, also in the workplaces, measuring where your bias is. So as a GBV case manager and a GBV counselor, when I go to new organizations and I've piloted new projects, one of the big things I always tell the organizations that their staff may benefit from is bias training. So assessing where your unknown bias may come from, whether that be culturally, because you can go into an organization that's new around gender-based violence, and because of everyone's different cultural identity, how they view gender-based violence is going to be completely different. So as much as the policy may be in place, measuring where each person's bias comes from is also going to assist in making those policies more effective, because it's going to be now understood more on a level playing field, because you're also taking into consideration the different cultural experiences and identities that everyone in your workplace has and what each of those cultures views gender as well as gender-based violence look like.
Yeah, I would say, Zain, everyone has, even as we have our own biases, but sometimes when we go to workplaces, we know we're working in a place of diversity. Sometimes we have to put our biases aside, not because we want, but to create a safe environment for all of.
And that's why when Ziona said just now about having that third party, you report it to someone who, like, I think it's human to be biased, because you know me, I know Ziona, we know, everybody knows everybody. So your favorite person may be the person who is offending the other person. So in that case, now it's very important. I really like that you said that, having that third party reporting channel. Of course, in the immediate workplace, you want to enforce the policies and ensure that it's fully understood, zero tolerance for, you don't be preying on your coworker because they're a female or identifies as female or whatever. So that's very important. We want to ensure that the victims, they feel like they have a place to go, a safe space to have the conversation. And they want to know too that it's being kept confidential and they're not going to be further victimized, or there's not going to be like, you don't want to seem like you're complaining, but you're complaining, right? So you want to have the conversation and you want people to understand what you're going through. You want solutions. So that's why it's so important. And I really, really like that that's being put out there in this conversation, that whoever hears even this episode, they understand that you should want to talk about it and it's okay to talk about it. And you want to equip yourself. You want to know, whichever organization it is that you're affiliated with, if the policies aren't clear, you have a right to know, right? So you can seek the information, ensure that you have that information. And I think too, we want the employers and the managers of these companies and to understand that just like how you have punctuality policies and you have code of conduct and you have all these different policies, it's very important too to have policies that clearly outline that GBV or abuse in the workplace is not tolerated, and you should want to inform your staff members, make them feel safe, ensure that they know that if something is happening that's against the policy, then it's okay to talk about it and provide them with the means to have the conversations.
Yeah, you want to make sure as a workplace when victims come forward that they don't feel just tolerated. They feel like they're being seen and they feel like they're being heard, and that something is actually being done and action is actually being taken place to make change. So change may not come instantly, but at least putting those things in place and allowing the individual that comes forward, or if nothing has happened yet, and we would hope it stays like that in an organization, just now putting in those policies for individuals listening that maybe you're an employee at an organization or you're the employer at an organization. Asking for those policies, looking over those policies and seeing, is there any policies that we currently have that have anything to do with GBV or sexual harassment or verbal harassment or any type of harassment within the workplace? And if there is, when was the last time that we had everyone sign off on the document? Or when was the last time we had an educational training around it? And if it isn't in place, what can we do to make sure that we have this in place and to allow the individuals within our workplace to also know if something has happened that you didn't report before, or if something were to happen, that we're a workplace that is going to stand by you and we're going to hear you and we're going to believe what you say.
Well said.
Yes, you're right, saying.
Thank you. That was a really great conversation. I hope everyone listening is able to take a piece from that, especially with it being the 16 days of activism and November being Violence Abuse Prevention Month. Topics like these are very important to have conversations about. Sometimes they may be uncomfortable, but topics like this are ways you're also going to be able to know who your supporters and who your allies can be if you ever did need to come forward and disclose.
Yeah.
So thank you, Maimuna, for joining us for this important.
Thank you, Leslie, for having me.
It was a pleasure having the conversation, very enlightening as usual. Today we explored how GBV manifests in various forms, such as harassment and bullying, to more subtle yet harmful behaviors that can undermine an individual's sense of safety and belonging at work. We also discussed the profound impact GBV has on an individual's career, mental health, and overall well-being, and practical ways organizations can better support GBV through clear policies, training, and a culture of openness and support. We hope this conversation inspires you to advocate for change in your own workplace and to support those who may be affected by GBV. If you or someone you know is facing these issues, you are being encouraged to reach out to local resources or support services. You don't have to face it alone.